Just feels like a good placeholder to get an update if there is one available, if we take a short break, and then that feels like a natural time to get that update and then potentially pass this item.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Neri, do you have a guidance on moving something off of this agenda's consent agenda item to another agenda, to the regular meeting agenda?
Mr. Meridian, I wouldn't move it to the regular meeting agenda. I would move it just to the end of this agenda because, again, it hasn't been noticed for that. I did speak with Councilmember Schrader earlier today. I mean, this is a very narrowly construed subject, so definitely I think what she's asking is to have a future meeting topic discussion broader than just what this covers. But I wouldn't move it off of this agenda to a different one. I just moved to the end of this one.
So we were talking about just moving to item 4.
Correct.
And then potentially delaying that item until after items 5A and 5B is what?
That's what I would say, yes.
The direction would be.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Councilman Schrader.
I think at a minimum, if it's possible to move it to the end of this meeting would make sense. Again, I'm not sure if I'll be introducing a future meeting topic or not. I just think as part of the discussion about the ongoing emergency declaration that it would make sense to get an update if there's one available from Central District Health's meeting that I understand is taking place soon. It's possible that meeting will run over and there will be no update. We could certainly have a discussion again about future meeting topics later in the regular session. It just felt like a related item to me.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Kavanagh.
I know that Mr. Mayor is maybe having some technical assistance right now, but I'm trying to understand why, what risk we have in continuing this item to later on in our main meeting. Clearly in the past, when we've ran out of time in our workshop, we've moved items to the main meeting for consideration. I think Councilmember Schrader has a good point in that some of this could potentially be, some of the questions maybe that any of us might have about this item we're proposing to continue could be addressed via this Central District Health meeting. And so I think, I guess I'm struggling to see the issue with moving it to our main meeting. I just need a better explanation about that as to why.
Councilman, Mr. Neri, would you like to give Councilman Kavanagh a better answer or a different answer than you provided?
The first answer wasn't good
Mr.
enough.
Mayor, Mr. Council, we were trying to figure out some echo problems here, but basically my only concern is we're adding an agenda item to the regular agenda that hasn't been noticed. As a future meeting topic discussion, you can talk about whatever you want, both on this meeting as well as the next meeting. So again, Councilmember Schrader and I talked, this particular resolution, I don't think is related to a future meeting topic, but maybe I'm wrong. But the discussion beyond just this resolution certainly can be a future meeting topic, but you can't get in much of the meat of it today. It's really identifying that future conversation.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Horton.
To that point, though, at the regular meeting, at a 6 o'clock meeting, I mean, this is just process, not substance, but at the 6 o'clock meeting, we could amend that agenda at that time due to unforeseen emergency, new circumstances being the meeting that's taking place today, and then add a topic at 6 p.m., at least to provide an update and discussion on whatever happens at today's 4 o'clock meeting?
You're absolutely right. We can add that for that purpose if we have enough information to provide that, yes.
And that, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman
that action would happen at the start of the 6 o'clock meeting. So it could stick on today at 4:30 and then do with it what we want, but also add it at 6 if we so choose.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I'm just trying to figure out though how continuing this local disaster emergency declaration for another 30 days, whether they do or they don't, put you in a position of deciding what actions you will take. And if, for example, if they say, yes, we're going to make masks mandatory, you still need emergency authority for expenditures and other things that might happen in the 30 days. Doesn't matter about the mask, whether they do or not. So giving you that authority to act in these emergency situations, expenditure of public money, et cetera, that's still a good thing. I don't know if we need to wait to see what happens, because if you have that emergency authority and you decide to act on something else or something similar or what have you, that authority does exist. I'd like some clarification if Councilwoman Strader could kind of enlighten me on what would we need to do that's outside of that authority that we would have the mayor execute.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Strader.
I think what I'm trying to achieve is a way to get an update on Central District Health that's related to an agenda item that's already on the agenda today. And so if there's another way to get an update, that's fine. I feel like it's a related topic, and so it felt like a natural place to have that conversation. But if there's a different method to do so, I'm open to it. Certainly, I am not proposing that we not continue the mayor's emergency declaration for funding reasons and other reasons. I just thought this seemed like a natural place in the agenda where it would make sense to get an update at the end of our meeting regarding Central District Health's meeting. That's all I was trying to do.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember Hoagland.
And then I'm thinking if we do remove it, put it under item 4, and then which is right after this consent agenda, and then delay that until after the department reports, we may have some information, and then we can decide where to go from there. So that at least buys us a little more time, if that's an option.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilwoman Strader.
That would work perfectly for me if it's okay with everybody else. I just really would like that update and feel like it's critical information for all of us, not just necessarily the mayor, but the council and mayor as a whole.
My only question will be, who is the expectation this update comes from, because they're meeting while we're meeting?
Mr. Mayor.
It can't come from me because I'm running this meeting, so.
Could you repeat that? I didn't understand what you said.
I'm asking who they expect the update to come from, because they're meeting while we're meeting. So I'm not going to say we can all grab our phones and look at it at some point in time. I'm just curious, what update is expected from whom on a meeting that none of us are watching?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
is there a motion yet?
There is.
Body?
Where's the motion? We're under discussion of the motion.
And that's to move.
Currently, we are just under, we don't have any motion to move anything off the agenda yet. We have a motion to adopt the agenda as published. There's been no, and it's been seconded. There's been no modifications to that motion yet.
Gotcha. I'll call the question on the adoption of the agenda. We'll get to the consent and we can address it then.
I have a motion and a second to, the question has been called to adopt the agenda as published. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Guys have it. Item number 3 is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
I'd like item 3H to be removed from the consent agenda and moved to item 4.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move item 3H to item 4 in the agenda. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
I would move that we take up item 5, A and B first, and then circle back to item 4, and we'll see where we're at.
Can we do item 3 first?
Probably. So I apologize, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended, and the mayor to sign and clerk to attest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. Is there a discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item number 4, do I have a motion to move this item after item 5B?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
I do move to rearrange 4 to follow 5A and B.
Second.
Councilman Hoagland.
Second the motion.
I have a motion and a second to move item 4 to after 5B. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Item 5A. I'll turn this over to our finance department to discuss fiscal year 2020 net zero budget amendment in the amount of $3,677,200.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm here before you to ask for spending authority on a grant that we've been awarded through CFAC, which is the Coronavirus Financial Advisory Committee. That's through the state of Idaho. The $3.6 million is up to an amount that the city of Meridian is allocated by the state. So it is not the actual expenditures that has been expended as of today. It is a budget amendment for spending authority. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Kavanagh.
If Councilmember Hoagland had a question, I was going to make a motion.
I think he was prepared to make a motion, but I'll take it from you.
All right. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I move we approve the net zero budget amendment in the amount of $3,677,200, the CFAC Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security CARES Act as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the budget amendment. Is there a discussion on the motion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Borton?
Aye.
Kavanagh?
Aye.
Perot?
Aye.
Strader?
Aye.
Hoagland?
Aye.
Burnt?
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries. Item 5B, community development, Fairview Avenue Road widening and access update. I'll turn this over to Mr. Hood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. First, before I get into my presentation, I just wanted to call to your attention our newest employee in community development in the planning division, Miranda Carson, is real. She's here. She's ready, and she's already actually starting to, get her feet under her and a foundation. I put an agenda item request in for 2 weeks from today for your workshop. Next week, you have a workshop with MDC. So that agenda's full, but in 2 weeks she'll be back and she'll have a draft strategy on how to engage with the school district. But I want to just let you know that she's here and we're getting her ready to address you here in the next couple of weeks. So with that, Mr. Mayor, I will continue on to the item at hand. That's the Fairview Avenue Locust Grove, the Eagle project. So on June 9th, I was here and we kind of walked through the corridor from Locust Grove, just west of the Locust Grove intersection on Fairview to Eagle, almost Eagle, and we kind of went through that corridor and I explained the improvements that ACHD was contemplating and that they had an upcoming virtual open house. That open house was June 11th and just closed this last Friday, July 10th. So I'm back to share that information in your packet. You have a draft summary of the comments received. I actually received an updated version of the summary from ACHD today. So I'm going to just put this up on the screen real quick as the summary to the project itself. And then this is, I think, around 40 or 50 pages of comments that were received. They had 116 people at the virtual open house. They also had some one-on-one conversation with some businesses, and I'll touch a little bit more on that here in a second. But again, that's in your packet, so you can see the comments. There were quite a few comments on the bike facilities that were proposed. There was a project team meeting on Friday, and that was discussed a little bit. I think the consensus from the team is what they had, which is just a traditional buffered bike lane is the best on Fairview, just because of the nature of Fairview Avenue and all the driveways, the curb cuts. To do something detached really just creates a lot of conflict and a lot of weaving, even for bicyclists, because they're trying to, you don't want to go through the throat of the driveway. You got to bring them back so that cars can see them. So I think they're going to stick with again, a buffered bike lane, so 2 feet of striping basically, and then a 5-foot wide bike lane with the project. I thought it was interesting just to hear from the ACHD project manager that there's general business support and acknowledgement of the need for the project. I guess that isn't too surprising, but when you talk about restricting turning movements, that's not something that's very typical. Not going to say that it's 100% of all businesses. You can see in the packet there are a couple that already submitted letters that aren't real happy about the raised medians and the restricted turn lanes. But for the most part, and just an example, both Fred Meyer and D&B understand that. They see the accidents that happen there in front of their businesses, and ACHD is working with D&B in particular to relocate their main entrance further back so that they can have more stacking distance to get into their site better. And that also allows the Fred Meyer kind of main entrance between the subway and their fueling station to have more stacking lanes so more cars can access that too. So again, the businesses are working with ACHD on designing the best project that still meets their needs while limiting some of the turning movements in the project. They're also going to try to fit in a dedicated left turn lane, a through lane, and a dedicated right turn lane at the Hickory Avenue intersection. And I can kind of go there if you'd like. To kind of walk through this corridor. It's been a while, a month, I guess. So here there's a center median that's been a maintenance problem. It's actually owned by ACHD. It's old enough where back in the day they're in the right-of-way and ACHD has it, and their maintenance folks were like, we're tired of maintaining this, and none of the adjacent property owners really wanted to maintain it. So ACHD is going to rip this out so we can get 3 lanes southbound, if you will, with those turning movements. I'm going to jump to Carroll Street. That's another thing. So Carroll feeds us, it's a largely county subdivision. A couple of lots up front actually have annexed and converted to office lots. The current design does not have a left out for them. So they'd be forced to go down through and make a U-turn somewhere else if they were able to get all the way over to make a U-turn at Fairview, but I imagine that wouldn't be possible at many hours of the day. So ACHD is going to try to work in a left out for them out of Carroll subdivision. So there wouldn't be that left in is difficult and the conflicts, but they're going to work on that. I think to me the last outstanding issue was something we talked about last time, was the pedestrian access at Webb. So again, Webb is a newer roadway. There's a lot of development occurring in the Pine 43 project. So this aerial is out of date. They're actually doing a lot of clearing this area right now for some commercial development, but there's hundreds of apartments and residential units that are going up just off screen here. And you have those services. So again, the Fred Meyers, the Sonics, some other businesses, retail businesses in this strip mall here. But to get there as a pedestrian or a cyclist, you would either have to go down to Hickory or down to Locust Grove, which again, they're both about a third of a mile away. So in reality, probably not a lot of folks are going to do that. They're going to wait for a break and try to get across here at some location. So I guess my request to you is, and ACHD is already aware of this. I gave them a heads up that we were talking about it. But if you're supportive of it, I would like to send ACHD a correspondence requesting that they consider a pedestrian hybrid beacon at the intersection of Webb and Fairview. Just a little bit more context. You can see there's a portion, this sidewalk's really wide here. This is a portion of the city's multi-use pathway. So we're really even trying to get bicyclists and pedestrians to use Webbway that connects to Pine. But it doesn't dead end, but it is difficult to continue on. So a crossing here, I think, just makes a lot of sense. There will be some impacts to, vehicular traffic flow, but we think that the benefits of having that pedestrian bicyclist crossing mitigates or overweighs the negative impacts those few times a day that it may be used or whatever to allow pedestrians to safely cross at that intersection. So again, I'm happy to, if we need to go through the corridor, if you have any other questions about those three-quarter turn movements, or if you want to go through the comments, probably not comment by comment, but there's a summary, and you've got, again, the comments included in your packet. So if you had a chance to look at that and want to discuss them, I will stand for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Caleb. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Pro.
So, Caleb, a couple of things. First, my question is, it sounds like the public was very concerned about business access, but the businesses themselves feel like this is an improvement. Is that correct? It's just a very, very general statement.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Pro, I think there is some concern from the traveling public, and I don't even know that I would characterize all businesses. Just in the past project, there's more support from the businesses on this project than you would get from others, and again, a recognition that something needs to be done. And I think that even is true of the general public that commented on this project. So I don't think how you summarized it is incorrect. There's comments on both sides of that, so I don't know that I'd overgeneralize those comments and say the businesses are overly in support, but the traveling public has more concerns. Honestly, there were a lot of comments about the bike facilities. I don't remember the numbers, but just going through it, there was a lot about appreciating that there's some bike accommodation, but it should be more or better.
Mr. Mayor, follow-up.
Councilman Pro.
And it sounds like that the businesses have had the ability to communicate with ACHD directly about any concerns that they do have. The ACHD has met with them on a one-on-one basis as necessary, is my understanding. So I just want to make sure that those businesses also have the opportunity to give feedback, just like the general public has done through the survey. And then I just want to say I'm in support of your request for the pedestrian hybrid beacon at Webb and Fairview. I had the opportunity to be with you when the pedestrian specialists came in and did a workshop for us, and I believe there was also an ACHD representative there, as well as some other members of the Central District Health. And just seeing it through their eyes, the pedestrian specialists, it's very clear that that can be a pretty dangerous situation if people are crossing without a protected place for them to move across 7 lanes. So I really would like to hear from fellow council members on whether they support that communication to ACHD.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
I was going to ask Caleb regarding the pedestrian crossing. I've been trying to think in Meridian where we have a like crossing with a large, multiple traffic lanes, where we have that. And I was thinking on Franklin Road. Do we have any on Overland Road? I know on Linder.
Right behind us.
That's right, Meridian Road, right?
5 lanes.
That's right.
At an intersection with problems.
So, and Mr. Mayor, if I can,
Thank you.
so yeah, they are on arterials like Meridian Road. I can't think of any 7-lane roadways though. There are on the state highway, but those are full signals where you have pedestrian crossing. So I don't know of any PHBs on a 7-lane roadway, which this would be going to 7 lanes. So even Meridian Road is a 5-lane roadway. We don't have many 7-lane roadways other than this segment of Fairview east of what's on the screen. So I don't know how many even actually exist in the county.
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
and Caleb, could you pull that particular slide you had up showing that intersection?
It's up. I don't know how to share it again. Let's see.
If not, I'll just thinking through that. Because we have Redmire on the opposite side, so you'd have to go down the left, and then you can cross over at Locust Grove. So Webway over here on the far left. You have the Sonic. There's some various businesses there.
Mm-hmm.
Or you could go down to Hickory, cross, and come across. I guess we're talking about mainly Sonic, if someone in those apartments wanted to go out and jump across to get something real quick. I understand that. But also if we do that, then what if another, business comes in on the south side of the street, fast food, they can get their Diet Coke fix or whatever it is very, very easily without that. And then is there gonna be reduced use of that because of, there's now, an answer to that situation? I don't know. I don't know if it's premature, and I didn't have the benefit of the, seminar that you went to. I was unable to attend, but, we wanna make things easier for pedestrians. We also want people to be healthier, which makes them happier. So do they walk a third of a mile to go across at a light? That's all that kind of comes together. So I haven't made up my mind on that pedestrian crossing.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Pro.
Councilman Hoagland, what are your thoughts on, I guess my main concern is less about folks who could walk, but folks who might be wheelchair bound or who have a disability that makes it difficult for them to go all the way down to Hickory and to really essentially walk almost an entire mile around just to get across the street. That was sort of my main concern with the pedestrian access. In addition, I believe that Pine 43 stretches pretty much to where there's existing businesses on the south side right now. So I don't know that there's any space left open for commercial, but maybe Caleb can give us some clarification on that.
Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, Councilman Perot and council members, that's what I was gonna just mention. I mean, there's pizza and teriyaki and some other things on the south side today. So yeah, if you didn't want a burger, you got whatever. There's other opportunities. There are a couple of vacant lots on the frontage of Pine 43. That's what I was saying. So some of these are, in fact, we've issued some CZC's building permits for a couple of these. I don't think they're fast food, just as an example, but there will be some services. I guess the other thing that I would, kind of what we're envisioning is some of the folks that are in those apartments could be the employees that also have jobs at the Fred Meyers or at the Sonic or at the whatever. And yes, there's some health benefit, but again, I think the statistics will show that people they're not gonna go that far out of direction when they can see where they're trying to go. They're just not gonna go that far to cross, and they're likely to take some chances. And I'm not gonna try to oversell it to you, but I just don't think it's very realistic to, even if they're able-bodied, to really go that far out of direction. But there are some opportunities for some additional commercial enterprises, not fully built out, but largely to the west it is, there's not a whole lot of opportunity for additional. I will, just real quick, Mr. Mayor, if I may, something that Councilwoman Perot brought up, and I had again, part of the conversation I had with the project manager at ACHD earlier today. I don't want to misrepresent. He has not talked to 100% of the businesses on the corridor, and we didn't go down every business on the corridor. He did mention some that I mentioned. He did mention also Snake River Yamaha and working with them, and their concern is more about the ones that got put in 5 years ago and how the cut-through traffic affects them. And in fact, they maybe don't even want the left into their site because they're still concerned about that traffic, and they want everybody to basically come up Jewel, which is the backside, to get in there instead of continuing to use their entrance as the main. But he hasn't talked to Carpet One. They've reached out to him, but has not made contact with them yet. So just as an example, so again, I don't want to misrepresent that they've talked to all the businesses. They've tried and they've reached out, and I think they've been fairly successful in their minds, anyways, with that engagement. But it's not 100% of all businesses. So.
Council, any further questions or comments on this information?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
are there any, was that the single loose end, so to speak, was whether or not to include that?
Well, so, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Borton, I mean, you can make any comments you want on the 3/4, you know, if you have comments that way, anything else with the scope of the project. I mean, it's all up for, you know, any kind of feedback. I guess I didn't close the loop, so Brian, the PM, is gonna be talking with ACHD Commission next Wednesday. So he's gonna provide a similar update on all the comments he's received from both the public, stakeholders, the businesses, and the city, if we have any. So, from my perspective, and sharing with the Transportation Commission, you know, I don't have anything else. That's the one thing that I would recommend, is that we ask them to at least consider the PHB. I don't think it's something we pound our fists on and say you absolutely have to have it, but I would like to see them at least do the analysis, see how it functions, if you put it in, see if you can design it in, and what, you know, which side would that be? To the mayor's point, I mean, we want it to function well and be safe. I don't know of any, you know, crashes or incidents out here, but there's been certainly some near misses. So what can we do, and how does that look if it's a 2-stage, cross halfway and you wait, and then you gotta cross again when there's another break? I don't know, but, asking them to at least consider something for pedestrians, from my perspective, is the outstanding issue. If you have others, though, I can relay those.
And Caleb just kind of hit the nail on the head. I recognize this is different because what we see at this, out here is you see people utilizing the hawk signal to try to create a break in the traffic for left-hand turn movements. Here, you don't have left-hand turn movements on either side. It would be right onlys out, so it does impact it a little different, so it's not exactly. But it also goes to a larger conversation. I recognize everything's not similar, but we've heard from ACHD that hawk signals at intersections are not preferred. Maybe it's okay if you have limited turning movements. So I'm trying to be a little consistent with what we've seen, what they say, but understanding maybe this is what breaks the rule for having a hawk signal in place.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borden.
I tend to agree, and I think the recommendation or the request to at least consider it makes sense in light of the comments here. I think the pros outweigh the cons and the risk. The only other comment that I would suggest we make is the access restrictions are obviously a big deal, and to the extent, and I know a lot of the comments referenced it, some of the businesses referenced it, and I don't know how each of these are graded or scored necessarily, but just to the extent there's a close call limitation on some access restriction put in place for safety considerations, that I think I'd like ties go to the business, for lack of a better term, to try and minimize the need for restrictions to access to these parcels. I don't have a particular one necessarily, but I'm figured they take that to heart and understand if there's a close call or a business that has a particularly unique, compelling request, that we'd be supportive of that.
Council, any further questions or comments?
So, Mr. Mayor, I know I'm not on council. I thought maybe that wasn't a long enough pause to give them a chance to answer. I did just want to say, though, kind of to Mr. Borton's comments there will be a second open house in September as well. So we'll take the comments from this first open house, maybe tweak some things, throw that back out there. And so this isn't the only bite at the apple, if you will. Maybe there are some changes to the access proposed, again, at Carroll Street. I mentioned one they're already considering, and potentially Webb. So I can come back to you, too, later in the fall with where they're at as design progresses, too.
And Mr. Mayor, let Caleb know that for the webway pedestrian access, yeah, I'm not opposed to having them put that request in and see what they say about it. We'll see.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I'm in agreement. I think they should consider it, and they're experts at designing them. They could take that feedback and see if it's feasible. It does seem like a really wide road to try to accomplish one of those pedestrian crossings on, to me. But if there's a way to do it safely, I think it's worth exploring.
And we had an A-OK and a head nod from Councilman Cavanagh for your benefit since you were looking down, Caleb.
Thank you.
Caleb.
Okay. Thank you very much. So we are back to new item 4, or are we item 6? I don't know technically which item, what our number is.
Mr. Mayor,
There, Councilwoman Schrader.
I would just point out that I haven't been watching it, but I can tell that the Central District Health meeting is continuing. Councilman Borton had an idea. I didn't totally follow it. I appreciate him though, trying to throw me a lifeline. I'd like to try to find a way, if there is a break and there is a decision made, to get some kind of an update from Central District Health tonight in our various upcoming meetings. And I'll defer to the rest of council on how to, if there's a procedural way to do that, if we can do that in an open meeting topics, if we can get an update, or if it has to be tied to an agenda item. And I'm talking like a quick informational update.
Well, maybe my suggestion would be to approve this item during the meeting, and everyone can spend the next 15 minutes watching, and they can get their own information.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
I agree with some of the remarks by Councilman Hoagland earlier with regards to the resolution. We understand the reason that it was pulled off the consent to try and facilitate this conversation, but we might have other means to doing it. So the purpose and intent is still as valid as ever, so I would move that we approve resolution number 20-2216.
Second.
That's got a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move that we adjourn the work session.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn the work session. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.